Hi, it's Gene retired in Mexico, and I've got a special guest today, Professor Gumbo from Phoenix, Arizona. So we're doing a Phoenix, Mexico recording here. And we're going to go through our favorite albums, starting with 1972. If you've missed 70 and 71, those are already uploaded. Um, the series isn't getting a ton of views, so if you're on here watching this, we really appreciate it. We would like to see your comments. I am on Patreon and Instagram and Facebook, so would be happy if you connected with some of those sites as well. And um, just a couple things. One is these favorite albums, which we're going to count down from 10 to 1, are just our personal favorites. So if you like something different, that's fine. No need to be aggressive about it or anything. We're interested in your opinion. We consider it equal. We're not tastemakers of the universe here. And yeah, so we're going to get right into it because it's going to be a long video, and I'm going to go first. But first of all, we just logged on, and I wanted to ask Professor Gumbo how he's doing.
I'm doing okay. Been kind of busy with some home repairs going on, getting ready to move sometime in the foreseeable future, not immediately, but have to get some stuff done. One positive thing is that the heat seems to have broken. The Arizona heat seems to have broken. And that's a real relief. For those of you who don't live in Arizona, it's there's a few crazy people who love it, but there's other reasons to live in Arizona besides the temperature. And,
Yeah.
and you know, uh, November, which is coming up soon, through January are usually good months to enjoy yourself here.
Terrific. I'm going to do what we did in the last two episodes and provide just a little bit of context for what 1972 was like. And by the way, there was only about 4 billion people in 1972, so we've doubled our population since then. But just to put that year in perspective, musically, I would say the biggest development in 1972 was probably glam rock. Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars took off like a rocket that tour. And in England, T Rex was in the midst of something called T Rextasy, and they dominated the charts for 18 months. They had many number one singles. They weren't as big in the US, but glam rock 72 was really the year for glam rock. Politically, Nixon visited China. So are we having any repercussions from that? Hell yes. We have open trade now, but that was a big deal in 72 when the president of the United States visited China. We also had the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT II treaty, or SALT I treaty, the first one. So that was between Russia and the United States agreeing not to use nuclear weapons. So that's pretty big. Watergate burglary. Yeah, Watergate burglary. That happened in 72, and that changed the political landscape. In sports, Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer played chess in Iceland, and Fischer became the first American champion of chess, and they went on to make movies about him. And it was a big deal. Even people who weren't into sports were kind of aware of the chess tournament. In the Olympic world, it was a bad year. 11 Israeli athletes were murdered at the Munich Olympics. Oakland Athletics won the World Series. What was interesting about that was the manager paid the players to grow mustaches. I remember that. Apollo 17 landed on the moon. That was our final Apollo mission. So there were no more trips to the moon after that, manned trips. Countries that were in the news, Uganda, Idi Amin was in the news a lot, and the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. We had two new countries, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Mozambique had a civil war. Nicaragua had a major earthquake. The Rolling Stones were involved in that because Mick Jagger was married to a Nicaraguan, Bianca Jagger. And in the film world, some of the most popular films were The Godfather, still considered the best movie by some people's perspective, Poseidon Adventure, Cabaret with Liza Minnelli and Michael York, and Deep Throat was 1972, and Deliverance was 1972. By the way, I think Deep Throat and Deliverance, either movie could have had the line, "You got a purty mouth there." So a bad joke, I guess. But yeah, we're going to get right into it now. I'm going to start with my number 10 pick. And I'm going with the Memphis band that formed by Chris Bell and Alex Chilton, who was in the Box Tops. And this is Big Star, their debut record, #1 record. It kind of formed power pop, though some might say Todd Rundgren and some others. But Big Star, #1 record. It's fantastic. It's just catchy, full of great melodies. And the two songs that I'm picking, we're going to do two songs from each album here, and then make a playlist, which we'll put the link down below. But I'm picking a song by each writer and singer. So for Alex Chilton, I'm picking the song "The Ballad of El Goodo," which is kind of a ballad, and then a rocker by Chris Bell called "Don't Lie to Me." So number 10, Big Star, #1 record.
Great choice. For me, uh, the number 10 is the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, an
Mm.
album that uh, really redefined the Stones for me. I had, as a youth, and we're talking 1972. This was, I should back up and just say what's important about this. This was my sophomore year of high school, and it was the year I began dating the woman who is still, after all these many years, my wife, Cindy. Okay, so very important year to me. And the music was very important. Um, as a elementary school student growing up, and being a huge Beatles fan, I liked the Rolling Stones. They didn't touch me the way that other bands did, but I certainly recognized their greatness. But Exile on Main Street, was amazing because the album, when it first came out, it bothered some people because 1972, everything was very produced and very slick. And Exile on Main Street, recorded in France, was a very sloppy album with Mick and Keith in particular, both using a lot of heroin. And the album should not have worked. In retrospect, in the last 50 years, so many bands have tried to duplicate the sound of Exile on Main Street, the dirty, grungy sound of Exile on Main Street. It's a brilliantly sloppy album. I say brilliantly sloppy because it's a two-record set and almost every track is a winner. But when you first hear it, if you were used to the smooth sounds of 1970s, it was really kind of a frightening album. So the songs that I chose, again, it was difficult to choose because there are so many good ones, but one of them is my favorite song sung by Keith Richards, and that is Happy.
Mm.
I love that song. And then the other one is near the end of the album. And this is an interesting album because it starts great and it ends great, and in the middle is the slightly less great stuff. But All Down the Line, I love that song, All Down the Line. And I that pushed it above Tumbling Dice for me. So the two songs I like the best are uh, Happy and All Down the Line.
Those are great songs, great tracks. That's going to make for a great playlist. Yeah, great pick. And it was jarring at the time. I remember that. Number nine, another sort of power pop album. Proto power pop. Is that a word? I'm going with Todd Rundgren, Something Anything. Well, or what I should say is Something Anything, because there's a question mark on the end. And unlike the Big Star, which I didn't discover for years, this Todd Rundgren album's been with me for a long time. I did hear this in the 70s and fell in love with it. I've fallen out of love with it maybe one time, but I fell back in love with it again. It's a great album. It's a double. It's a double, and it's got some experimental things on it. Um, this was Todd's reaction to being called the male Carole King, and he decided to do something a little more adventurous. But it still has some of the classic pop melodies. My favorite song, I have a clear favorite on this album, and it's "Couldn't I Just Tell You." Uh, it's a rocker and it's really good. And then I thought, well, I should put one of the classic singles on here. So I'm going to go with Hello, It's Me, which was a song he recorded with the Nas in the 60s, and then he re recorded it. Three sides are just Todd. So couldn't I just tell you is Todd doing all the instruments. And then Hello, It's Me is with a band that he used on side four. Um, Great album that I've loved for decades.
Can't disagree with you there. It is such a great album. For me, number nine is Joni Mitchell for the Roses.
Mhm.
And this is probably my favorite Joni Mitchell album, although there's another one that might tie for it. But it's a beautiful album. It is a Joni Mitchell really proved herself as a primo singer-songwriter on this one. And the lyrics are stunning, actually. They're just pure poetry. So for people who say, well, Joni Mitchell, is she a poet? Yes, she is. And For the Roses is proof of that. Um, the two songs that I like the best are Cold Blue Steel and Sweet Fire, probably the strongest song I've ever heard. Apologies to the Velvet Underground, but strongest song I ever heard about heroin. Um, and it's funny because when we were in high school, I believe it was, Eugene pointed out to me that this was a song about heroin, the cold blue steel and the needle and the sweet fire, the heroin. And when you and actually because it was such a good one, when I taught rock song poetry to my students, my AP students, I chose this song as one of them. Um,
Wow.
and when she says, "Do you want to contact somebody first?" It's down, down, down the dark ladder. It doesn't glorify heroin use at all, nor does it romanticize it. It's very, it's a very powerful, um, objective look at what was happening with a lot of people using heroin at the time. The other song is from the end, and it is uh, Judgment of the Moon and Stars, Ludwig's tune. And Joni kind of gives us a hint that, yeah, this is about Beethoven. Of course, if you look at the lyrics closely, you can see it's about piano and piano composition. But there's also references to the civil rights movement and a lot of other things going on there. But the Judgment of the Moon and Stars is has always been one of my favorite Joni Mitchell songs ever since I first heard it.
Wow, great picks. Yeah, and when she sings down, 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 she descends down, 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 and I love that. My other pick from that album, it's not on my top 10, but I like the song "Woman of Heart and Mind,"
Yes, yes.
which gives me the feminine perspective better than just about any song. And yeah, but your picks are great. For the Roses, yeah, it's kind of sandwiched in there. It's kind of a forgotten album, but it deserves to be listened to for sure.
And it's got a picture of Joni's naked butt on the inside.
That's true too. Yeah. Number 8 for me, someone who keeps showing up on my lists is Neil Young. I'm a big Neil Young fan, and this is the album Harvest, which made him a big star. And of course, he would later react to that stardom by doing his version of sloppy albums. So he followed in the footsteps of the Stones. His next album was, I think, Time Fades Away, which is a great album. We're jumping ahead, but that's my favorite song from that album is Don't Be Denied, which was recorded in Phoenix. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I did not know that.
Yeah, it was recorded at Veterans Memorial Coliseum. But before that, he made this very accessible album called Harvest. And it used to not be my favorite album because there were just a couple songs on there that weren't my favorites back in the beginning. And those are, let me look those up real quick. A Man Needs a Maid and There's a World. I now love those songs. A Man Needs a Maid, some people think is a little misogynistic, but I don't hear it that way. I think it's just an honest, heartfelt song. And so this is largely acoustic. It's not as electric as the albums that came before. After the Gold Rush has some very electric guitar on it. So does Time Fades Away. But in between here was acoustic guitar and harmonica. Some of the performances he did here, there's one he did for the BBC before the album was released. And I'm amazed at how his live performances are so close to the studio versions that it makes sense that he would later go on to do some albums where he just recorded them live with new material. But I'm going to go with the classic single, Heart of Gold. You know, it's the first Neil Young song I ever heard. And it's great. It's got a wonderful lyric, very yearning and heartfelt about searching the world for someone. It's kind of like that. Kind of reminds me of that Van Morrison song, you know, from Poetic Champions, Someone Like You. It's just one of those songs where he's searching the world for a love. And then my second track, I was going to put The Needle and the Damage Done, but I changed my mind at the last minute, and I'm going to go with Old Man, which is another heartfelt song about he bought a ranch in California and it came with a caretaker who lived on the property. So when he bought the ranch, he ended up buying this man as well. And he wrote this song, Old Man, for him. And just two really great tracks, Heart of Gold and Old Man.
Great. Um, we're going to have to figure out a third one when we get to my choices here. But okay. So my number 8, by 1972, I was really, really becoming a prog head. I was getting into progressive rock. And, you know, Gene, you mentioned uh, that it was the year of uh, glam, but it was also the year, not the year that prog started, but the year that prog blossomed into some absolutely amazing albums.
Yeah,
And as a
you're
matter of
right.
fact, the 72, 73. And so my favorite Emerson, Lake and Palmer album is Trilogy. And
Hmm.
I love that album. A lot of people would choose Brain Salad Surgery, which was a great album, but a bit overwrought in retrospect. Trilogy was such a fine album. And choosing the best song, well, obviously, there's a great ballad with a little bit of, it's really a Greg Lake song, but it has some great synthesizer on it. And that's From the Beginning. And it's just a pop song that made the radio, and it was really a great song. But Then where do I choose for the other one? There are two long tracks. Both of them are in three parts. One is Trilogy from the second side, and that's a wonderful song. But I still love, and Gene, if you put this on the playlist, it's the Endless Enigma Fugue and the Endless Enigma Part Two. Okay, it's separated into three tracks, but it is one song with
Right.
a Keith Emerson piano fugue in between. And so The Endless Enigma and From the Beginning are my favorite tracks from an otherwise incredible album.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that was your favorite album by them, but yeah, I think the transitions are better as well. Sometimes brain salad surgery just makes a sudden, it'll just go into a new motif and it's kind of jarring. And Trilogy is an album that just flows. So yeah, great. I haven't listened to that album in a long time, but I like it. I like it. Number seven is where I'm putting a couple prog albums in here because I do like progressive rock. And my number seven is Close to the Edge by Yes, my second favorite Yes album. It's only three tracks. So what I did was for my songs, I went with a couple Steven Wilson remixes from the Steven. I'm gonna on the playlist. I'm gonna put tracks where he's broken down these long 18-minute pieces. But yeah, I mean, Close to the Edge. That first couple minutes, it's jarring when you first hear it back in the day, but now it just seems normal. And of course, it's got some beautiful melodies by John Anderson, some killer bass from Chris Squire, some of the fattest bass. I think it was a Rickenbacker or something that he used. And he's such a distinctive bass player. And then you've got Steve Howe's guitar and Bill Bruford's drums. It's great. So these songs are going to sound like I'm picking the full piece, but there are little excerpts from there. One is called "I Get Up, I Get Down," and that's just the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful melodies John Anderson ever sang. And the other track I'm picking is "And You and I." And like I say, I realize that's the name of, like, "In You and I" is the name of the entire piece, I believe. But I'm just taking the section called "And You and I" from that piece, just to keep the playlist a little shorter. But it's only three songs on the album. So if I pick two songs, I'm picking about 60% of the album. I didn't want to do that. So yes, Close to the Edge at number seven.
All right. Um, my number seven is Neil Young's Harvest. And the two songs that I would choose from it would be Heart of Gold. And then the other one, what is Alabama.
Mm.
But the reason I said we'd have to consider what a third song would be is that my actually no, we're okay because we had you had Old Man, right?
Hmm.
Which would have been my third choice. But yeah, so the song Heart of Gold is a really, really beautiful ballad by Neil. And then Alabama is one of Neil's one of the two songs that really pissed off Leonard Skinner. Um,
Yeah,
that along with Southern Man.
right.
Um, but those are the two. And by the way, the band that Neil Young played with here, part of the reason the album has a sweeter sound is because it's not just a band of session people, nor is it Crazy Horse, but it's a band called the Stray Gators who toured with him, when this came out. And with that banjo type sound and all of that, it's really made this album great. Neil tried to recreate. I mean, for a while he was distancing himself from this album. As you pointed out, he got really grungy for a while. Many years later, he tried to recreate the sound of the album with Harvest Moon. And it kind of worked, but to me, it doesn't have the magic of Harvest.
I
So,
would agree with that assessment. Yeah, I love Harvest Moon. I think it's a great album, but it's not Harvest. Um, yeah, there's maybe two or three killer tracks on there, and the rest of it is just very good. Um, yeah, okay, so we both have Harvest, not too far apart. Mine was number eight, yours was number seven.
yep.
Okay. So I have another prog album at number six. And, going through the 70s, I have discovered, to my dismay, I'm a big Jethro Tull fan, and I've seen them twice in concert, and they keep missing my top 10. I thought I was a super fan. I guess I'm just a fan. But 72 is the exception. Thick as a Brick, my favorite Jethro Tull album. Um, Much has been written about it, so I don't know what I can say. It certainly escaped me at the time that it was a spoof on prog rock. I took it as a serious prog rock album. I didn't know. I mean, I kind of got the humor, but I didn't understand fully the joke. But the joke was on Jethro Tull because now it's considered a prog classic. Thick as a Brick, which used to be very dense to me lyrically, but now I understand it. You can never fully understand Ian Anderson, but I follow the story now on this. And yeah, it's one piece. So I'm going to go with Steven Wilson's remixes, which break up the album, and I'm going to take a song he called "Really Don't Mind." See there, a son is born, and one called Tales of Your Life. So those are just excerpts from Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, which, by the way, every musician is great on there. But last couple times I listened to it, I thought maybe the standout musician on that album just might be Barrymore Barlow on drums. There is some fantastic drumming on that album. I'm just so impressed by it. So, yeah, number six, Thick as a Brick.
Okay, my number six is a band that I discovered not quite at the ground floor, but pretty much so in high school. And I was really into this band, and practically nobody I knew was, and yet they have been one of the most influential bands in avant-garde pop. Are they basically were a kind of glam band, sort of, but they're they're not. You can't really describe them as anything in particular. Some people have put them in the prog category, but they're not really that. And that's Roxy Music.
Hmm.
Um, Brian Ferry's brainchild when he met Brian Eno. And Brian Ferry was an art teacher, a high school art teacher, who was always as interested in art as he was in music. But when the band began, they were crazy. I mean, they really were. Some people said that they were like a British Velvet Underground. And over the years, Ferry, once he realized he could sing like a crooner, and not a joke crooner, which he did in the early albums, um, you know, he actually he smoothed out the sound of Roxy Music, but it was always great. And Brian Ferry just turned was it 90? I think so. Um,
Really?
and just yeah, just a couple days ago. Um, and so Brian Ferry was the real genius behind it, but the early Roxy Music albums would not have been the same without Eno and Eno's contributions of sounds and synthesizers and avant-garde. If you've never heard Roxy Music, especially early Roxy Music, you've just got to give it a listen because uh, it's melodic, but it's also chaotic, melodic, chaotic. And the they added a single, the British single to the American album, and that was uh, Virginia
Pajama.
Plain.
Oh, Virginia.
But
Okay.
Virginia
Pajama or Virginia Plain?
Pajama Rama. Pajama Rama was added to was from the For Your Pleasure. Um,
Oh, okay.
but Virginia Plain, but there's a song that is like Virginia Plain but better. It's the opening track, and it is Remake Remodel, where the chorus is singing a license plate, CPL 5938. Um, and what's really interesting about the song is uh, for a couple of years prior, from 1970 to 71, um, a huge band in America was Chicago. And Chicago, on their first couple albums, on their first track, would near the end of the song, each member of the band would step forward and play a little bit of something, just like a bar. And Brian Ferry, tongue in cheek, arranged that the whole band does that at the end of Remake Remodel, with Phil Manzanera doing his guitar and Paul Thompson doing his power drumming and Eno making screeches and squelches on the synthesizer, Andy McKay honking away on the saxophone, and Brian Ferry just dun 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 dun, dun on the piano. Um, but it's it's a great introduction to the band, not just from the first song as the first song on the album, but an introduction to their sound. And then a quirky, weird ballad from later on side one, If There Is Something. And it kind of has three parts to it. And my one of my probably my favorite part is when I totally Brian Ferry became a real crooner later, but at this point he was like he was almost a scary croonerish type of thing when he says, I would do anything for you. I would climb mountains. I would swim all the oceans blue. And I would walk 1,000 miles, reveal my secrets, more than enough for me to share. And then the great line, I would put roses round our door, sit in the garden, growing potatoes by the score. And it's a crazy song. When I first got into Roxy music, I have to say, and I'll point this out later, but again, but I always wanted to share all the music that I loved with Cindy. And most of the time, she immediately was attracted to it. She couldn't stand Roxy music at the beginning because of Brian Ferry's voice. She said he sounded like Tiny Tim. Um,
Oh
and
no.
I remember one time I had to hold on to her when she was trying to flee my bedroom, because I was playing some Brian Ferry stuff. And, she's, no, I can't listen to this. Then she grew to love Brian Ferry's voice. It was amazing because we were still in high school and I was playing a Roxy music album. And I think it was this one, as a matter of fact, yeah, in the car on a cassette. And I said, I won't bother you. And I was going to take it out. She said, no, keep playing it. I like this. So, and she grew to love Brian Ferry and Roxy music. So those are the two songs, Remake, Remodel, and If There Is Something.
Terrific. Great picks. Yeah, so at number five now, I'm moving out of progressive rock and I'm gonna go to some glam. So number five, I have my favorite album by T-Rex, and that's The Slider. And boy, has this album grown on me over the years. It's one of those albums like, well, I once heard AC/DC describe, you might say, Gene, you're comparing T-Rex to AC/DC. Well, they have one thing in common, and that is that you wouldn't add or subtract anything to their albums. Minimal, perfectly minimal, just the right touches, just the right instrumentation. Tony Visconti's production is fantastic on here. Yeah, T-Rex, as I mentioned, was huge in England. And it's just such a catchy album. Electric Warrior did not make my top 10 for 71, but in 72, my favorite T-Rex album, The Slider. And the songs I'm going to go with are the title track, The Slider, and then a deep cut, which nobody talks about. But I really love a song called Baby Strange with
Hmm.
it's just basically two notes that go down and up, real minimal, but I like the slider and Baby Strange. So that's my number five pick.
The Slider was the first T-Rex album I got. Cindy and I were just hanging out together and shopping at a drugstore, and there were a lot of cutout albums for like $1.99. And I was familiar with T-Rex from the music magazines, and I went ahead and bought it then. So, that's interesting that that you chose that one. My number five is an album that means so much to me, and partly because, again, now you're going to hear me talk about Cindy a lot, but we cross-pollinated on, music here.
Yeah.
She bought this album and she told me how much she loved it and she let me borrow it. And I put it on my record player. And I say record player because it was still a year before I got my really good component stereo system. And I just played it over and over and over again. And that is Cat Stevens' Catch Bull at Four. Um,
Mm.
Often not chosen as people's favorite Cat Stevens album, but it is mine. It has so many beautiful songs on it, and actually, not many singles, but the every song I love. And the first one is a song called it's either Angel C or Angelcia. I've never been sure which, but Cat is starting to bring in synthesizers. Cat was very influenced by the synthesizer prog thing, as we'll see later. He actually made um, a proto or a semi prog album, but Catch Bullet 4 using a lot of good synthesizers, and the song is Angel C or Angelcia. And the other song is my favorite Cat Stevens song ever. And this is I know, Gene, you, a large part of your video stuff is, for old people like me, old farts like me who say they just don't make them like this anymore. But honestly, when I listen to uh, 18th Avenue, Kansas City
Mhm.
Nightmare, I can't think of anyone who sounds like him. There's one British artist who my friend Roxanne compares to Cat Stevens. Yeah, but he doesn't have that special brilliance, that special magic. Cat Stevens was one of a kind. Nobody else. He considered a singer-songwriter, but nobody else in the singer-songwriter genre sounded anything like him. And 18th Avenue, um, which is just, I never get tired of playing it. As a matter of fact, frequently when I'm playing the album, I will go back and play that song a second or third time because it's so great. Okay.
Wow.
Um, so, Angelcia and 18th Avenue.
Yeah, I like that's my favorite period of Cat Stevens is Catch Bullet 4 and maybe Foreigner.
Mhm.
So I kind of like that period in there. Not as big a fan as you, but I like that period that you're talking about. That's a great album. Number four for me, I'm sticking with glam, but as you said, it's a bunch of different things, and this is the debut by Roxy Music. So I like it every bit. I guess I like it even more than you do. I'm finding that I'm a Roxy Music super fan going through this project. They're a band I've always liked, but have never been like a top 50 band for me. But they are now. They've grown on me over the years. This album still sounds fresh, still sounds radical. I don't think there's anything quite like it. And my songs that I picked were the same two that you picked, Remake, Remodel, and If There Is Something. If There Is Something, by the way, is a song that it actually starts out to my ear. It starts out as a country song. It has
Hmm.
like a country beat with the drums. And then just on a dime, it changes to a minor key and in comes um, Andy McKay on his oboe doing the strangest sort of avant-garde uh, oboe solo, which to me is fantastic, and I love it. But as we have said, we're going to, if we pick the same two songs, the person with the higher pick is going to pick a third song. And it's really tough. I was just looking at the album. It's got, I don't know, I could pick any song, but with your permission, I'm going to go with 2HB to Humphrey Bogart. It's kind of a deep track, but I like it. I also like Sea Breezes and Ladytron, but and Virginia Plain, but I think I'm going to pick 2HB. Do you have any objections to that?
None whatsoever. Nope. Great choice.
Okay.
Okay. And by the way, you're choosing putting Roxy Music at a higher place than I did. I would only say because the five albums I put above it are just such perfect ends that I just,
Right,
and
right, right.
yeah, and so now we're talking about albums that when I die and go to heaven, these albums better be there or I'm going to hell. Um, and the first is number four is the classic David Bowie concept album, the album that made David Bowie's name, really, even though Hunky Dory was a big one. The rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And how do you choose from here? Well, I'm hoping that you might choose one of the two that I'm leaving out, or that we'll put it together as a twofer. Um, my two favorite songs from here are Starman, which was a late addition to the album. But when Ken Scott said, "You really need to have a single on here," which is funny that he said that because almost any song on there could be a single. But so Bowie said, all right, well, I'm going to rip off a famous classic pop song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And he wrote Starman, which follows the same chord progression as Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's perfect. The other one, God, I for so many years I heard these two songs together because they're not really the same song, but one moves right into the other. And that is the Ziggy Stardust, the title track, and Suffragette City, the rocker. But if I have to choose between the two, Ziggy Stardust, I would choose. So Starman and Ziggy Stardust, which, the song Ziggy Stardust sort of sums up the whole story in a 3.5 minute song.
Yeah, can't argue. And that's my number three is Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. And I thought I said in an earlier episode when we were talking about Led Zeppelin, I talked about not needing to hear an album again. And I think I was misunderstood a little bit because what I really meant by that was just that I've got it embedded in my brain. And it doesn't mean I don't like the album. And Ziggy Stardust is kind of that way. I don't play it as often as some other David Bowie albums because I know it front to back. And if I were on a desert island, I, and I didn't have the album, I could still sing it to myself. Um, which, by the way, to digress, you were talking about you hope you have these albums in the afterlife. I'm a cigar smoker. Mark Twain said, "If there are no cigars in heaven, I shall not go."
Very good.
And so we could say if there's no Roxy Music or David Bowie in heaven, we're not going. So I did pick two different. I did pick slightly different tracks. I did pick Ziggy Stardust, um, but the other one is Moon Age Daydream,
Uh-huh.
which I just love Mick Ronson's guitar on that. It's such a freak out at the end, and it's a pretty incredible song. But yeah, like you said, you could. I mean, Starman is a fantastic song, and yeah, you could pick anything, but So anyway, I kind of have like a little, if you want to call Roxy glam, I have T-Rex, Roxy Music, and David Bowie at my 543. So I've got a little glam suite there of 6 songs. So
One song that I considered choosing, but you'd be hard pressed. Many people would be hard pressed now to find a version of the album that has this bonus track. But to me, it's an amazing track. I had it on my top Bowie songs, and it is the Sweet Head, um, which has Bowie's great line, "Till there was rock, you only had God." Um, all right, now I think I figured out a way to get what I want on here, mostly what I want. My number three, Jethro Tull, "Thick as a Brick." I still distinctly remember walking around at Moon Valley High School after school. I don't know what I was doing, but I was walking around the campus singing the entire song "Thick as a Brick" to myself. Yes, the entire 45-minute song. I had it memorized. Why? Because one of my chores was to mop our Arizona room on the weekend, and I would often listen to Jethro Tull's "Thick as a Brick," and I learned the album that way. Okay, got a couple of the lyrics wrong, but I learned the album that way. Okay, so what I was going to choose from this is side one because side two is great, but side one is brilliant from beginning to end and from beginning to almost end. So here's how I'm going to recommend you put it, Gene, since you're putting the Steven Wilson stuff on there. Um, if you choose the Steven Wilson tracks, because I have them both on my thing here. You said "Really Don't Mind," and what was the other one you said?
Tales of Life, I think.
Tales of Your Life. Yeah. Okay. So add to "Really Don't Mind" "The Poet and the Painter" and "What Do You Do When the Old Man's Gone?" Okay. Those are the second and third ones. That creates the first 16 minutes of the album. And back before Steven Wilson did it, and I used to make Jethro Tull anthologies, I would take basically that that portion of the album and record it. So the first three Steven Wilson recordings there, but the first two, I mean, the second and the third. You've already chosen the first, so the second and the third. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so it'll be the first 3 tracks, and then Tales of Your Life is from side two. So, but
Absolutely.
that'll make a good playlist.
Okay.
Uh, no, not the first 3 tracks. Tracks 2, 3, 4,
No, tracks.
7.
Didn't
Yeah, that'll work.
didn't you say "Really Don't Mind"?
Uh, oh yeah,
The
yeah, I did.
Yeah,
So tracks 1, 2, 3, and 7.
right, exactly. Yep.
That'll be perfect. Okay, great. I'm looking forward to the playlist.
As am I.
Number 2 for me. Wonder if you can guess my last two. Um, I am going with our beloved Van Morrison, St. Dominic's Preview. Great album. Starts off with "I Will Be There." I think that's the first track.
Hmm.
Uh, no, Jackie Wilson said,
And Jackie Wilson said, "Then I will be there."
and Gypsy, and then "I Will Be There." Yeah. Um, every track on here is great. This is a 10.0 album. And I love the instrumentation. I mean, there's some pedal steel guitar on here, nice acoustic guitar. Yeah, a nice blend of his sort of moondance R&B and his sort of stream of consciousness Astro Weeks. He's kind of blended 2 styles. It's a really kind of a maturing album. Because Astral Weeks and Moondance are, to me, very different albums. And then by the time you get to St. Dominic's Preview, he's starting to blend those styles, in my opinion. And there's some country western on here, like I mentioned, the pedal steel. Really great. I am going with the tracks Listen to the Lion and the title track St. Dominic's Preview. So number two, Van Morrison.
Great. Those are my two choices. Also, I will give you my a third one if I may, from the other one. Okay. But yeah, this album um, was my first actual Van Morrison album. And I mentioned in one of our earlier discussions that the radio station KDKB would often play a lot of great album tracks. And there was a morning DJ, Toad Hall was the name that he went by. And when this album came out, he would be playing almost every track from it. Um, and so, I'll tell you more about it when I get to my number one, but it was my first Van Morrison album. All right, my number two. Close to the edge, down by the river, down at the edge, round by a corner. And then Rick Wakeman's Swelling Organ.
Oh, I forgot to mention Rick Wakeman. Yeah.
Okay, so uh, I can't break Yes songs into bleeding chunks. I got, especially since if, despite my love for Genesis and, you know, Supper's Ready, which, I'm going to mention because it's in my five honorable mentions, the album from Foxtrot. But if somebody asked me, what is one prog track that pretty much defines progressive rock? If somebody knew nothing about progressive rock, what would you play them? And it would be side one, title track, Close to the Edge. Okay. I used to, often on anthologies put Siberian Tatru. And You and I is great. I mean, the album is great. It's got three great songs on it, but I would go with Close to the Edge from beginning to end, the 18-minute song.
Okay. I think that's the best. Yeah.
And I wouldn't add any more to it because an 18-minute song is enough to cover.
Right. So, yeah, I'll figure out what to do, but yeah, we'll put the whole thing on there. Why not? Because it's our playlist, we can do
It's
what we
our
want.
list. It's our list, and we'll do what we want. Don't push me.
Number one for me is an album you mentioned. I got the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street. It was your number 10. It's my number one.
Wow.
Uh,
But you've
this
always
is,
been more of a Stones fan than me.
yeah, and there's really just, my favorite period is this Mick Taylor period. I like Exile on Main Street and Sticky Fingers. That's my favorite
Don't tell
little
Ronnie.
period there. What's
Don't
that?
let Ronnie. Don't tell Ronnie about that.
Ronnie? Oh, Ronnie
Ronnie.
Wood.
Yeah.
Well, I said in an earlier video, though, that I think he's the best live player. So I have a DVD of their concert 1981, Hampton, Virginia, that's just fantastic. I mean, it's just a fantastic concert. And Ron Wood is stellar on there. In fact, to tell you the truth, how's this for a hot take? I think Ron Wood kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? He's kind of he's the guy that Keith can lean on a little
Mhm.
bit because Keith's kind of the riff monster. But then Ron Wood, who also I think happens to be a terrific slide guitar player. Um, I love Ron Wood. Yeah, he's a great visual artist too. Have you ever seen his visual art?
Yes.
He's a good painter, very good painter. But Exile on the Main Street is just you're absolutely right. It shouldn't have worked. When you look at the notes, sometimes Keith is playing bass. A couple times Charlie didn't show up because he was I think he was 30 miles away. He had to drive, and there were all these people like Graham Parsons coming in and out. Um, I watched a thing on the one of the Eagles was talking about how they record no, not the no, the band on the last waltz. I was watching the last waltz, and Rick Danko was talking about how people were coming in and out of Woodstock. He said when they were by themselves, they were very productive, but when people came by, they started having fun. And this album should have never even made it off the ground. They were just in France for tax exile. I love every song on here. It's 10 out of 10. I mean, I love Ventilator Blues, and I just want to see his face or whatever that song is called. I just want to see Jesus. And Sweet Virginia and Sweet Black Angel and all these great songs on here. Right? I love the album so much that I love the middle. But I'm going to go with two songs that you did not go with, and I love your picks. They probably would be my three and four. Yeah, that would be my three and four. But I'm going to go with Tumbling Dice.
Right.
Yeah, this has got a great groove, great Charlie Watts drum on it. Uh, yeah, yeah, great track. And then I'm going to go with the very last song on the album, and that's called Soul Survivor, which has
Mm-hmm.
really grown on me. That's a great track. So side four is great, all down the line, and Soul Survivor, and yeah, that whole side four is just fantastic. So this is not only my favorite Rolling Stones album, but it's probably one of my 20 favorite albums. It's just it's it's one of the ones I want to take with me to heaven.
They won't let that one in.
St. Peter, yeah. Let me review that. Oh, it's got the C word on it. It's got the S
Yeah.
word on it. Okay.
Yeah. Great, great, great album. Okay. Uh, my number one, as I've already tipped my hand at this, St. Dominic's Preview. Um, I heard almost all of the songs on KDKB while I was a sophomore, and I would record them on my little cassette recorder and play them for Cindy. And she was so sweet. We had been formally together for 2 months, not even quite 2 months, because officially we began dating on October 28th, which will be pretty soon coming up here. 1972. We'd been together for a while, but we started going steady then and have been together ever since. And for Christmas, she got me St. Dominic's Preview. So my first Van Morrison album, even though I'd heard other albums by him, that was my first one. And I just absolutely love the album. And since and you said um, listen to the Lion and St. Dominic's Preview, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I those were my two also. But since I get to choose another one, this was one that Toad would play regularly, and that is Redwood Tree, a,
Oh,
a song that is reminiscent of something off of Moondance. Oh, and by the way, you mentioned the country sound. That's because this has many of the same musicians recorded during many of the same sessions as the previous album, Tupelo Honey, which had kind of a countryish feel to it. And Ronnie Montrose is on it, and some others.
wow. Yeah. So we have a lot in common. Probably three-quarters of our list was in common. Uh, Great. So I'm going to go with my honorable mentions. Now, I happen to have five, and I tipped off to you that as we go through this series, there's going to be years where it's not going to be five. So I'd like to break the rules on that. But for this year, I had four, I had four, and at the last minute yesterday, I threw in Genesis Foxtrot as one of my honorable mentions. I was playing it again, and I thought, yeah, I like it. It's not. I have two or three favorite Genesis albums. That's not one of them, but I like Foxtrot a lot. Um, so that's my first honorable mention. And then, and these are in no particular order, though I think the next one I want to mention would be number 11. It was right there with Big Star. Big Star was my number 10. And I originally had this album at number 10, and I replaced it with Big Star. But it's the soundtrack to the movie The Harder They Come,
Mm-hmm.
which is attributed to Jimmy Cliff, but which is really a various artists album. And I absolutely love this album, and it was painful not to get it in my top 10. I remember how much you liked this album. It's just a great collection of classic reggae songs like Johnny Too Bad and The Book of Rules. These are great. Toots and the Maytals Pressure Drop is on here. And then you have Jimmy Cliff's best songs, Many Rivers to Cross, and the title track. And man, if there's any flaw to this album, it's only that Jimmy Cliff does the same song two times on
Right,
here.
right.
I wish they'd put one more different reggae song on here. So yeah, maybe it's a 9.8 because of that, because I'm like, oh hey, I already heard that Jimmy Cliff song. But it's it's perfect. I love The Harder They Come. If you haven't heard it, I really recommend it. Another one of my honorable mentions is my favorite album by Procol Harum, a band I don't think about a lot or play a lot, but I absolutely love live in concert with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. And I remember hearing Conquistador on the radio when I was young and just loving that song. But the whole album is great, Whaling Stories and In Hell 'Twas I. And, you know, they had these, like I think Deep Purple was attributed to doing the first rock album with a symphony orchestra. But for my money, I've listened to that album and it's good. But for my money, I think Procol Harum was made, was born to do an album with a symphony orchestra. It's just a perfect marriage. Two more. I have Rod Stewart's Never a Dull Moment. My second favorite Rod Stewart album. It's pretty close to perfect. I love it. There were too many good albums for me to squeeze this into the top 10, but the single was You Wear It Well, but Lost Paraguay and True Blue and Angel, the Jimi Hendrix cover is on here. It's Twisting the Night Away, Sam Cooke cover. It's great, great album. And then finally, Stevie Wonder. So I do have an R&B album on here, or soul album, whatever you want to call it, Talking Book. Talking Book is a fantastic album. The singles were Superstition and You Are the Sunshine of My Life, but every track on here is really good, and I would have liked to have gotten that in there. So Genesis, Jimmy Cliff, Procol Harum, Rod Stewart, Stevie Wonder.
All right. Very good albums, excellent albums. And it's an embarrassment of riches because my honorable mentions are also albums that I would love to have in the top 10. One of them, Sentimental Reasons, on my fifth, was it my 15th? Let's see, let me think about it for a minute. Anyway, for my birthday in May, after Cindy and I had been together for a while, my parents took us to this great Chinese food restaurant that we often would go to. And they gave me tickets to my first concert, two tickets to my first real concert. And those were to Gordon Lightfoot because
Oh,
they knew that I really liked Gordon Lightfoot. And liked Gordon Lightfoot because of this album, Don Quixote.
mm.
And the two songs, I mean, I know we're not supposed to choose two, but I love the title track, and then um, the Patriot's Dream, which is Gordon Lightfoot's anti-Vietnam song,
Mm.
um, and very powerful. And I should mention about Gordon Lightfoot that Bob Dylan once said about Gordon Lightfoot. He said, "I have never heard a Gordon Lightfoot song that I didn't wish I had written." And how can you get any better than that from Dylan? You know. Um, and Dylan, I mean, Lightfoot was a great songwriter, as well as a had a smooth style and great melodies, and he's great, and he needs to be better remembered. Genesis Foxtrot, yeah, me too. How can I leave that out with a massive piece like Supper's Ready? Well, because the other tracks aren't quite as top notch as some of the things from, later albums, but it's still fantastic album. Elton John. By this time, I was really into Elton John. Honky Chateau. Not the most perfect Elton John album, but it has my favorite Elton John song on it, which is Rocket Man. Yes, that is my favorite Elton John song. And
Wow.
so um, and then and then my version of your Procol Harum live, a band that in high school I loved and I still love, and they put out a lot of great albums. And I would say normally their greatest hits might have been the best, but this is even better than their greatest hits. It is the Guess Who live at the Paramount. This is
Mm.
essentially, I mean, and it's great because it's basically a live greatest hits. Um, Burton Cummings' voice is in amazing shape. They do like a 10-minute version of American Woman. And they also have tracks from the album that came out after their greatest hits, So Long Valentine. And I was really a huge Guess Who fan for a long time. And when I want to put on some Guess Who, I either put on Greatest Hits or I listen to Live at the Paramount.
Mm.
And then the other one is, how could I have left this off the top 10? How could I? Well, only because there were so many others. Todd Rundgren's Something, Anything.
Mm.
A two record set of brilliant pop rock. There's rock on there. There's some experimental stuff, but mostly it's two-thirds beautiful, beautiful power pop and ballads. So those are mine, five honorable mentions.
So I only remember four. Can you run
Gordon
those down
Lightfoot,
again?
Genesis, Elton John, Guess Who, and Todd Rundgren.
That's four.
Gordon Lightfoot, put your fingers up again. Gordon Lightfoot, Genesis, Elton
Elton
John,
John.
Guess Who, Todd Rundgren.
Okay. What can I say? I'm good at math, but you wouldn't know it.
He can't count worth shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
No, but it's funny.
Hey.
My students would always laugh about the fact that when I was telling them about, I'd say, there are three things we need to remember. Or I'd say, there are two things we need to remember. And I'd hold up three fingers, and I'd always have one extra finger up, you know. And like there are four things you need to remember. So,
So I'm going to go through here and like we did in the other videos and just quickly run down who I've seen in concert and
all
I'll
right.
let you do the thing. And that includes the honorable mentions. So I've seen the Rolling Stones once on their Bridges to Babylon tour. So that was late, though when I say late, now that's already been 30 years. I remember when I saw that show, I thought, yeah, I wish I'd seen the Stones earlier. Seen Van Morrison twice. We've talked about that already. David Bowie four times. I've talked about that. But some of these bands we haven't talked about. I did see Roxy Music. I think we saw the show together. It was the Avalon tour.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I saw Roxy Music later in their career before they folded. Never saw T-Rex. Saw Jethro Tull twice. I saw Jethro Tull twice because the first time I saw Jethro Tull, they played for 20 minutes and then he had laryngitis and they stopped the show and they didn't give us any refunds. And so I had to go see Tull again to see an entire show. And I saw them later, both times in the 90s. Um, I've seen Yes once. I feel lucky now. I saw the Tormato tour in 78, maybe. No, earlier than that. Well, anyway, in the late 70s. And so Rick Wakeman had rejoined the band. So I did get to see the lineup with Rick Wakeman and Alan White. It was really good. It was at the Activity Center.
You
Neil
saw them
Young,
on
I've
the
seen. What's that?
you saw them on the Circus to Heaven tour.
Exactly. And there's bootlegs of that show that I've downloaded, and it it supports my memory, because sometimes our memory we can romanticize things, but you listen to bootlegs from that tour, yeah, there's good shows. Neil Young, I've seen twice, both times with Crazy Horse. So I saw him once in '87, I think, and then I saw um, not the tour that became Weld. The 90, saw him in 90, '87 and 90. Seen Todd Rundgren 6 times, mostly Utopia. Never saw Big Star, of course. They collapsed very early. Uh, the Harder They Come, I've seen some reggae shows, but I don't think no, I saw Jimmy Cliff. I saw Jimmy Cliff with Peter Tosh on a double bill. Yeah. Um, and I've seen Genesis twice in the Phil Collins era. I never got to see the Peter Gabriel era that you did. So I've seen most of these people, seen most of them. Your turn.
Okay, well, a lot of these I regret I never saw, but I did see Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Great show.
Hmm.
Um, and saw Roxy Music. You've already mentioned that. David Bowie 3 times, and three really great shows. Um, Jethro Tull twice. Never actually saw Yes, but I did
Yeah.
see Ian Anderson,
John
um,
Anderson. John
John
Anderson.
Anderson. I mean John Anderson, and that was like seeing Yes. Van Morrison 3 times. Yeah, 3 times with Van. Gordon Lightfoot, God, I've lost count because Cindy and I would regularly, every time Gordon Lightfoot over the next few years would come to the Celebrity Theater, we'd go and see him. I even got to shake hands with him one time. I think it was 4 times I saw Gordon Lightfoot. Um, Genesis, yes, I saw Genesis with Peter Gabriel, and I've seen the imitation Genesis a number of times, including on the Foxtrot tour by the band, the Musical Box, with the Genesis tribute band. Um, Elton John 3 times. Was it 3 times or 4 times? 3 times, I think. But the first time was very memorable. I saw him on the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, the opening of the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour at Big Surf, and Cindy and I went and see him there. Um, and it's great. When he did Funeral for a Friend, the his grand piano opened up and a whole bunch of pigeons flew out of it. So I never did see the Guess Who in concert. My friend Steve Bozer was a big fan and he saw them twice, but I never saw them in concert, which is maybe why I love this live album so much. And Todd, I've seen him several times, including um, on the David Bowie tribute, tour that was a couple of years ago. Uh, Todd was one of the main ones there. But my most memorable Todd Rundgren show, you were with me. It's memorable for two reasons. One, I was suspected of trying to assassinate Todd,
Yeah.
and 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 Stevie Nicks called me sweetie. And it was real. It was in the fall. It was on the acapella tour, and it was cold outside, so I had my big woolly jacket on. And as we were walking out, um, Kasim Sultan, who was part of Todd's band, came out. And I said, "Hey, it was a great show." He said, "Oh, thanks." He said, "Wait around a couple minutes, and Todd will be coming out the back door here." There was nobody else there except Gene and I. So I said, "Okay." So now Stevie Nicks had been down on the table just in front of us, and she was drinking like a freaking fish. Okay. And she was bombed out of her mind at this time. So she comes wandering out on her own. And then one of her handlers comes out and grabs her and pulls her back in. Then she comes out with her entourage. And I said, "Good night, Miss Nix." And she goes, "It's sweetie." And so, Stevie Nicks drunkenly flirted with me. And then Todd comes out with his entourage. And he had this real big guy who was one of his backup singers. Well, I just wanted to tell Todd how awesome he was and he was one of my favorites. I'd see him for a long time. And I had my right hand out ready to shake hands with him. And this big guy said, "Sir, would you carefully remove your other hand from your pocket?" And it was a very awkward moment because I laughed awkwardly and Todd laughed awkwardly. And I found out later that this was right after it turned out that, Mark David Chapman had planned on killing Todd. So Todd was a little bit paranoid at the time. But, it was nice. I got to meet Todd, but it was weird because, like, "Are you going to shoot Todd?" "Well, no, I don't even have a gun. I have a knife." Okay, so anyway,
Yeah,
so
and I don't exactly remember that, but I just know I shook hands with Todd. But
well, I know that you were about as drunk as Stevie Nicks at the time.
was I? Probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's why you were swaying back and forth behind.
yeah, that particular club, Dooley's, yeah, they had good drinks there, but I also saw Gordon Lightfoot one time, very early, like 1981, I think. No,
Hmm.
79 at Grady Gamage. It's a good show. Well, that's it. So thanks for joining me. And to the
Always a
viewers,
pleasure.
thank you if you're still listening, and we encourage your engagement. So, did you have fun, Jim?
I had fun, and I really enjoyed this one very much. I mean, I always enjoy them, but this is going to be one of my favorites of the bunch, I think.
Okay. Well, and as we say, what do we say in Phoenix?
In Phoenix, we say, "Thank God the weather broke."
And I say, as we say here in Bonita, Mexico, buen dia.